Hello. If I was a BBC News reporter, one of my top questions for government ministers would be, why do we have to roll out this vaccine when over 99% of people will recover from this illness? Why can't we instead just allow people to develop natural immunity without the need for any kind of medical interventions, especially a rushed experimental vaccine? Why? I know this would be a very, very uncomfortable question for government ministers because the answer, which I feel I can reveal, at least to some degree, in this video, would reveal that the handling of this pandemic is not about keeping people healthy, it's about profit. We keep hearing the scientists say this, the scientists say we need a tougher lockdown, the scientists say it's too early to ease restrictions, the scientists say we need to wear masks in more places, the scientists say this, that, the other. Well, who are these scientists? This is very worrying because to an awful lot of people, they will read these articles or hear this on the television and they will think this is a group of scientists who have independently, impartially, on their own, come to these conclusions just through looking at the evidence objectively, and are not aware that actually this is not genuine impartial science we're talking about, because these scientists, the sage scientists, that the ones that the government uses to drive their policy, have vested interests. They have vested financial interests in this vaccination rollout. I'd like to direct you to an excellent article by Dr. Zoe Harcombe. She appears to be a nutritionist, and this was dated November the 9th. Sage conflict of interest. She talks about Neil Ferguson, whose prediction on the 16th of March that 500,000 plus people will die of COVID in the UK and 2.2 million in the United States is what led to these lockdowns. Now, he later recanted on the prediction, and he also admitted this came from a 13-year-old piece of computer code. And I still find it absolutely shocking and staggering how the government would take such an extreme measure, lockdown, based merely on a prediction, when it is obvious that lockdown is going to do immeasurable damage to the economy, to people's general physical and mental health and well-being. So they're merely doing it on the basis of a prediction when they know it's going to be harmful. And in this article, it talks about how Neil Ferguson, he works at an Imperial College, which is one of the colleges that are developing these vaccines. I think I read that they're working on a new vaccine for the new variant or something like that. But they're a college that has vested financial interest. So the man who put us into lockdown has a vested interest in the vaccination programme. And here it states that what the lockdowns do is they weaken people's immunity. Because according to the germ theory at least, which I have serious doubts about, but according to the theory, if people are in their homes, they are not going to be able to acquire herd immunity because they won't be interacting with other people. They're also going to be cooped up and anxious and not having much sunlight and all that, and in fear, and all these things suppress the immune system. So by suppressing the immune system, you are promoting the need for a vaccine. Now, here in this article by Dr. Zoe Harcombe, and I highly recommend you read it. This is fantastic research, in my opinion. She talks about who the key influencers on the SAGE committee, 20 key influencers who have received funding from organisations involved in the COVID-19 vaccine. And it states there are 4 times more modelers and statisticians and experts in behaviour manipulation on the committee than there are biologists, and there are no immunologists. So these aren't a bunch of people we can trust. And this SAGE, they brought us that report on the 22nd of March, stating how they were going to exaggerate the threat and use the media to do so, to get people complying. They're wanting to weaken people's immune systems by getting people in fear, getting people shut indoors, because by weakening the immune system, there's going to be more need, supposedly, and more justification for a vaccination program. Locking people in their homes and other lockdown measures will reduce the number of people who acquire natural immunity, this article states. And this article, it has a list of the top 20 key influences from involved on the SAGE committee, and it goes through what organisations they belong to. Top one being Sir Patrick Vallance, and then Neil Ferguson, who since resigned from the committee when he actually broke lockdown rules himself back in early May, which obviously goes to show that he doesn't believe his own science, because if he really did believe that COVID-19 was really that deadly, he would have kept the rules himself if he believed they were necessary to mitigate a serious public health emergency. But it goes through all these, the top influencers on the SAGE committee, and it's all documented. So I highly recommend you look at this article. It's all footnoted. You can go and check out the links to these different people and what organisations they're associated with, and you will see their vested interests. The scientists that you hear about that want tougher lockdowns and more mask wearing and that, they have a vested interest in this vaccine being rolled out. They cannot be trusted. They cannot be used to represent all scientists in general. But the media give you the impression that this is what all scientists believe. It is a complete lie. You cannot trust government scientists. You cannot trust SAGE scientists. They have vested financial interests in this vaccination rollout. And I also want to direct you to the government's own website, because you can now read it from the horse's mouth. And this is interesting because this has only been this only came out in December. COVID-19 SAGE Register of Participants' Interests directs you to a PDF document, and you can see that a number of these SAGE members, they've got links to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, for instance, and you can see what groups they belong to and their vested interests. And I believe it was the British Medical Journal that put pressure on the government to release this information, because this has only been released quite recently, back in December. So there you go. You cannot trust SAGE scientists. We have documented proof that they have vested interests in this vaccine rollout, vested financial interests, which means you cannot trust that they're making an impartial judgments. And whenever you read or hear on the TV that the scientists say this, the scientists say that, just ask yourself, what scientists? Chances are it's the SAGE scientists, the government scientists, the ones that have vested interest in the vaccine rollout. They have an agenda and they cannot be trusted. If you want proof that this is not what the majority of scientists believe, go to the Great Barrington Declaration. Over 50,000 medical professionals have signed that. And the Great Barrington Declaration states that we should allow the vulnerable to shield and let everyone else live a normal life. This is not a few loonies, a few fringe scientists. Over 50,000 medical professionals have signed that. Now, I personally don't agree with everything in the Great Barrington Declaration, but it goes to show that this idea that we need tougher lockdowns and more masks and all that sort of thing is not scientific and is not what any type of majority of scientists, genuine scientists, independent, impartial ones who don't have any vested interests in pharmaceutical companies, believe. Thank you.